Two respected Victorian academics stepped off a train at Versailles on August 10, 1901, planning a simple afternoon of sightseeing. But what they would witness in those gardens would challenge everything science understood about time itself. Charlotte Ann Moberly, 54, principal of St. Hugh's Hall at Oxford, and Eleanor Jourdain, 37, a distinguished educator and future principal of the same institution, had no reason to expect anything unusual from their leisurely stroll through the Palace of Versailles gardens. They were intelligent, rational women of impeccable reputation, the kind of witnesses whose testimony could typically be trusted without question. Yet, what began as an innocent tourist excursion would transform into the most meticulously documented case of alleged time travel in recorded history. The date was significant in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. August 10th, the exact anniversary of the day in 1792, when revolutionary mobs stormed the Tuileries Palace, forcing Marie Antoinette to flee for her life. As Moberly and Jourdain wandered deeper into the sprawling grounds, seeking the famous Petit Trianon, where the doomed queen once played at being a simple country shepherdess, an inexplicable heaviness settled over them both. The afternoon sun seemed to dim despite clear skies. The cheerful chatter of other tourists faded to an unnatural silence. Both women later described feeling an overwhelming sense of depression and unease that descended without warning, as if they had walked into an invisible wall of ancient sorrow that still lingered in the very air of Versailles. Then they saw the people who shouldn't have been there, figures dressed in elaborate 18th century costumes, moving through the gardens as if they belonged to another era entirely. At first glance, it seemed like actors performing for tourists, but something was fundamentally wrong with the scene before them. The costumes were too authentic, too worn, too lived in. The people wore them not as performers in a show, but as if these elaborate gowns and wigs and breeches were simply their natural attire. More disturbing still were the buildings and pathways that surrounded these mysterious figures. Structures and garden layouts that Moberly and Jourdain were certain had been altered or demolished decades earlier. Gardens flourished where modern maps showed different landscaping. Bridges spanned waterways in locations where no bridges should exist. The very geography of Versailles seemed to have shifted around them, reverting to some earlier configuration that existed only in historical records. As they approached the Petit Trianon itself, both women spotted a figure that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Sitting alone on the grass near the palace, sketching in the dappled afternoon light, was a woman in an elaborate white dress and large hat. Her posture, her clothing, even the melancholy atmosphere that seemed to emanate from her presence struck both academics with the same impossible realization. They were looking at Marie Antoinette, not a performance, not an impersonator, but the actual queen who had been dead for over a century. The woman who had lost her head to the guillotine in 1793 sat peacefully in her beloved gardens, completely unaware that two women from the 20th century were watching her across an impossible gulf of time. Neither Moberly nor Jourdain spoke of what they had seen. Not yet. But both knew they had witnessed something that would change their understanding of reality forever. Don't let these mysteries slip away into the shadows. Subscribe to Dark Dimensions X and hit the bell for more unexplained encounters that defy explanation. For weeks after their return to England, both women maintained an unspoken pact of silence, each secretly terrified that speaking their truth would destroy their distinguished academic careers, until a casual conversation shattered their protective denial forever. It was Jourdain who finally broke first. During what should have been routine small talk about their French holiday, she hesitantly mentioned feeling depressed and eerie during their visit to Versailles. Moberly's blood ran cold. The careful facade they had both maintained crumbled in an instant as she realized her companion had felt the exact same inexplicable heaviness that had haunted her own memories of that August afternoon. What followed was a methodical, almost scientific reconstruction of their shared experience that would consume the next decade of their lives. These were not hysterical Victorian ladies prone to flights of fancy. They were Oxford-educated scholars trained in rigorous research methodology. If they were going to claim something impossible had occurred, they would document every detail with the same precision they applied to their academic work. Their separate written accounts, composed independently before they compared notes, matched with terrifying accuracy. Both described the same oppressive atmosphere, the same anachronistic figures in 18th century dress, the same impossible buildings and garden features. Most unsettling of all, both had seen the melancholy woman in white near the Petit Trianon, the figure they were now convinced had been Marie Antoinette herself. But the evidence went far deeper than shared hallucination could explain. When they consulted historical maps and architectural records, they discovered that the pathways they had walked, the bridges they had crossed, and the buildings they had observed matched the layout of Versailles as it existed in the 1780s, not the modern configuration they should have encountered in 1901. The kiosk where they had asked directions from a man in period costume appeared on 18th century plans but had been demolished decades before their visit. The bridge they clearly remembered crossing had been torn down in the 1870s. Even the trees and landscaping they recalled corresponded to botanical surveys from Marie Antoinette's era, not the Victorian period plantings that should have surrounded them. Most chilling of all was their discovery that August 10th, the seemingly random date of their visit, held profound significance in the final months of Marie Antoinette's life. It was on August 10, 1792, exactly 109 years before their experience, that the Queen had fled the Tuileries Palace as revolutionary mobs stormed through Paris. The anniversary of one of the most traumatic days in her life had somehow pulled her ghostly presence and the entire landscape of her beloved refuge back into existence. As their research continued, Moberly and Jourdain uncovered another disturbing pattern. Other visitors to Versailles had reported similar experiences over the years. Glimpses of figures in period dress, unexplained feelings of depression near the Petit Trianon, encounters with buildings that shouldn't exist. But these witnesses had dismissed their experiences as imagination or kept silent out of fear of ridicule. The two academics realized they possessed something unprecedented, corroborated testimony from credible witnesses about an event that challenged the very nature of time itself. But proving their case would require evidence that might not exist in any conventional sense. When Moberly and Jourdain returned to Versailles in 1904, armed with cameras and notebooks, they discovered something that would shake them to their core. The landscape they remembered so vividly had vanished as completely as if it had never existed. The kiosk where they had received directions from the mysterious man in period costume was nowhere to be found. The bridge they had crossed was absent, leaving only empty space where solid stone should have been. Even the pathways they had walked seemed to have shifted, leading to different destinations than their memories insisted were correct. It was as if the Versailles they had experienced 3 years earlier existed in some parallel dimension that had briefly intersected with their own reality. Desperate for validation, they interviewed dozens of Versailles staff members, groundskeepers, and tour guides who had worked at the palace for decades. Most claimed no knowledge of the structures Moberly and Jourdain described, but a few older employees offered tantalizing hints, whispered stories of previous visitors who had reported similar experiences, always dismissed as tourist confusion or overactive imagination. One groundskeeper who had tended the gardens for over 30 years reluctantly admitted that the area near the Petit Trianon had always felt different. Visitors frequently complained of sudden depression or unease when walking that particular section of the grounds. Some had even reported seeing figures in elaborate costumes, though the staff had learned to dismiss such claims as the result of too much wine or too many romantic notions about French history. The breakthrough came when Jourdain discovered a portrait in a French art collection that stopped her heart. The painting, dated 1788, depicted a young woman in an elaborate white dress and large hat sitting in gardens that perfectly matched the setting where they had encountered their mysterious figure. The woman's posture, her clothing, even the melancholy expression on her face were identical to their memory of the lady they believed was Marie Antoinette. But this portrait contained a devastating revelation. The woman in the painting was not Marie Antoinette at all, but Marie Antoinette Ileana de Polastron, Duchess of Polignac, one of the Queen's closest friends and companions, who had often joined her at the Petit Trianon during those final carefree years before the Revolution. The discovery raised more questions than it answered. Had they witnessed an encounter with the ghost of the Duchess rather than the Queen herself? Or had they somehow observed an actual scene from the 1780s when both women would have frequented these same gardens? The historical records showed that the Duchess had indeed spent countless hours at the Petit Trianon, often sketching and reading in the very spot where Moberly and Jourdain claimed to have seen their mysterious figure. As they delved deeper into court records and memoirs from Marie Antoinette's era, they uncovered additional details that seemed to corroborate their experience. The servants they had observed, the clothing styles, even the specific arrangements of furniture and garden ornaments all matched contemporary accounts from the 1780s with uncanny precision. Yet the more evidence they gathered, the more impossible their story became. They were asking the world to believe that two rational, educated women had somehow stepped through time itself, witnessing scenes from over a century in the past as clearly as if they were happening in the present moment. In 1911, 10 years after their extraordinary experience, Moberly and Jourdain made a decision that would either vindicate them as pioneers of paranormal research or destroy their reputations forever. They published their full account in a book titled An Adventure. The reaction was immediate and brutal. The British press savaged them as delusional spinsters who had let their romantic fantasies about French history overwhelm their academic judgment. Fellow Oxford professors whispered behind closed doors about the embarrassment these two respected educators had brought upon their institution. Students began to question whether women truly belonged in positions of scholarly authority if they could be so easily swept away by ghost stories and temporal fantasies. But the attacks only strengthened their resolve to defend their testimony. They had spent a decade researching, cross-referencing, and verifying every detail of their experience. They had consulted architects, historians, botanists, and costume experts. They had returned to Versailles multiple times, interviewed countless witnesses, and subjected their own memories to ruthless scrutiny. Every investigation had only reinforced their conviction that they had witnessed something genuinely impossible. The scientific community's dismissal particularly stung because Moberly and Jourdain had approached their experience with the same methodical rigor they applied to their academic work. They weren't claiming to have communicated with spirits or received messages from beyond the grave. They were simply reporting what they had observed with their own eyes, documented with the precision of trained researchers. Their book included detailed maps comparing the Versailles they had experienced with both the 1901 layout and historical 18th century plans. They provided extensive footnotes referencing court documents, architectural surveys, and contemporary accounts that seemed to corroborate the impossible scenes they described. Most compelling of all, they included testimonials from other visitors who had reported similar experiences at Versailles, creating a pattern of encounters that stretched back decades. Yet, even supportive readers struggled with the implications of their claims. If Moberly and Jourdain were telling the truth, it meant that time itself was far more fluid and mysterious than anyone imagined. It suggested that traumatic historical events could somehow imprint themselves on locations, replaying for sensitive observers under the right conditions. The scientific worldview of the early 20th century had no framework for understanding such phenomena. The controversy surrounding an adventure divided the academic world. Some colleagues defended the women's integrity while questioning their interpretation of events. Others suggested they had experienced a shared hallucination or been victims of an elaborate hoax. A few brave voices proposed that they might have genuinely witnessed something beyond current scientific understanding, a phenomenon that deserved serious investigation rather than automatic dismissal. As the debate raged in universities, drawing rooms, and newspaper columns across Britain and France, Moberly and Jourdain faced a terrible choice. They could retract their claims, preserve their reputations, and return to the safe world of conventional academia. Or they could stand by their testimony, accept the professional consequences, and let history judge whether they were visionaries or fools. They chose truth over comfort, knowing that vindication might not come in their lifetimes. Nearly a century after their deaths, Charlotte Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain have achieved something neither expected. They have become the gold standard for credible testimony about impossible events. Their case still studied by researchers who refuse to dismiss what cannot be easily explained. Modern investigations have uncovered evidence that the two academics could never have known in 1901. Archaeological surveys of Versailles have confirmed the existence of the very pathways and structures they described, foundations buried beneath modern landscaping that match their detailed accounts with startling precision. Computer reconstructions of the 18th century palace grounds revealed that their impossible memories align perfectly with historical reality, down to individual trees and garden ornaments that were removed or relocated decades before their visit. More intriguingly, quantum physicists have begun to propose theoretical frameworks that could potentially explain the Moberly-Jourdain experience. Theories about time as a dimension that can occasionally fold back upon itself, creating momentary windows into the past. Concepts of emotional energy imprinting traumatic events onto physical locations in ways that sensitive individuals might perceive under specific atmospheric conditions. While these ideas remain highly speculative, they represent the first serious scientific consideration of phenomena that Victorian-era academics simply had no context to understand. The pattern of similar experiences at Versailles has continued well into the modern era. Visitors still report inexplicable encounters near the Petit Trianon, glimpses of figures in period costume, sudden overwhelming sadness, encounters with buildings or pathways that seem to exist only momentarily before vanishing. Tour guides now quietly acknowledge these reports, no longer dismissing them as tourist fantasies, but recognizing them as part of Versailles' enduring mystery. Perhaps most remarkably, recent historical research has uncovered court documents suggesting that August 10th held even greater significance for Marie Antoinette and her circle than previously understood. New evidence indicates that the Duchess of Polignac spent her final day at the Petit Trianon on August 9, 1792, just hours before the revolutionary upheaval that would destroy their world forever. The emotional intensity of that last peaceful moment, when she sketched in gardens that would soon become symbols of a vanished aristocracy, may have created the very scene that Moberly and Jourdain witnessed over a century later. Their story endures because it represents something deeper than a simple ghost tale. It challenges our assumptions about the nature of time, memory, and reality itself. Two intelligent, rational women staked their professional reputations on testimony that defied everything their culture understood about the physical world. They faced ridicule, professional ostracism, and personal attack, yet never wavered in their conviction that they had experienced something genuinely extraordinary. Today, as we grapple with quantum mechanics, parallel dimensions, and the malleable nature of space-time, the Moberly-Jourdain incident seems less like Victorian fantasy and more like a glimpse into mysteries we are only beginning to comprehend. Their afternoon at Versailles remains unexplained, but no longer unthinkable. In the gardens of the Petit Trianon, where shadows still fall across paths that may lead to more than one century, their impossible journey continues to echo, a testament to the courage required to speak truth that the world is not yet ready to hear.